So.
Well, everybody knows that, of course.
Oh, good. So Rebecca and I could just quiz you on Doctor Who trivia.
That might be kind of fun.
Let's go.
yeah. Okay.
Let's go.
Name the creatures outside on there.
TARDIS, C-3PO, the Weeping Angel.
You got one.
And it looks like R2-D2 over there. Oh, no, that's the trash can that fires lightning bolts. What is it? I don't know.
The toilet plunger?
What is a toilet plunger?
That's a
that's
Dalek.
what its nose is. Yeah, it's actually
Oh, it's
like
a Dalek.
Yeah, Dalek.
Dalek.
Yeah,
And welcome back to another episode of Even More Matched Up, a podcast talking about all things pop culture, brought to you by Misericordia University. I'm Patrick.
Oh, and welcome. I'm Allan.
This is usually where you do.
Oh, that's
the next
right. And
part.
today we're going to talk about Doctor Who with resident Doctor Who expert Rebecca Kivak.
Yes.
Yes, Rebecca is joining us again. Welcome.
Hi. Thank you so much for having me. I am one half of the Take Two blog on Times Tribune blogs. My writing partner Tamara Dunn is not here today, so I'm going to try to give you as much Doctor Who knowledge as I can.
Excellent.
The
sure
show.
Allan will enjoy that.
Yes, we've had a lot of Doctor Who knowledge dropped already. It strikes me that the format of the show will be something like this. I will represent folks on the show who don't know very much about Doctor Who, and Patrick and Rebecca will stand in for all of those who think that Doctor Who is always totes awesome no matter what.
Oh, I can't really say that, because I've only been watching Doctor Who since Matt Smith debuted. And then I've caught the rest in like Netflix and whatnot. And I haven't watched any of the old Doctor Who. I tried to watch like one of the animated specials that they had, and I was like, oh my god, this is tiresome. So I'm very much a very modern Doctor Who, but really...
Well, I didn't say you knew everything. I just said you're going to say it's always totes awesome no matter what.
Well, no, they've had some clunkers.
You love the
episodes.
show, right?
Yeah, not everything is
fantastic. They've had some
Okay.
clunkers.
All right. So, a couple of questions just to get started. I'm
Yes,
not
as a
asking.
newbie, we feel we
not
should-
asking because I don't know.
Right. Of course
Asking to help inform the audience as they listen.
not. Exactly.
That was my job.
You have any questions?
No.
Okay. So,
Did
by the
we
way,
ask-
Richard is here today.
Yes,
So
and Richard, how well versed are you in the Doctor Who?
please tell me you know a lot about the expanded universe.
Thank you.
If you notice a book I brought with me, it is one of the from the Bounty Hunter series of the Expanded Universe.
Of Star Wars, which is not the topic of today's show.
I can
And
only do
so
many,
there, sir.
Yeah. Well,
I can only do
we
so many fandoms.
Rich, point made.
yes, we've been put in our place. But yes, Allan, you have questions.
Yeah. So, is the joke Doctor Who because we never know their name?
Well, he's just called the Doctor.
Right, but the show's called Doctor Who, so that's just that clever British humor at work.
I think so, yeah, because
Because it's like Doctor Who?
Right. Well, a lot of times, like people will say, like, what's your name? What do I call you? And he'll say, he or she will say, the Doctor, and then they'll say
Right.
Doctor Who.
Right.
So, I think it's the British humor coming in,
I
and also
lo-
he's kind of just been a mystery.
So
I
then
think
is
for a
his
lot of
name
people.
actually Doctor Who? Like, if he wrote his name now.
No, his name is just the
No,
Doctor.
his name is the
Is
Doctor.
the Doctor.
Or that's what he's known as. Whatever his real name
Or
is.
her, sir.
Or her, correct.
Well, just because that joke.
We don't know.
Who, Doctor Who? Exactly. So, like, he even implies that's part of his name. Like that. Is that his last name?
Well, but no one in
That
the
was-
show ever calls him Doctor Who. They just
That-
call him the Doctor.
Yeah.
Right, but then he does the whole thing
Thus
about,
my-
Doctor Who?
My-
And he's like, exactly.
That's my question.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we don't know his actual name, his or her actual name.
I literally learned that when I was 50.
Yeah.
I had no idea.
So yeah,
Like
so
50
they did
years,
during the
new knowledge.
during the Matt
Who
Smith
knew?
era. They did a lot more with kind of the idea that the
Are you-
name
wait.
was significant.
Are you
and-
giving us historical context?
I am.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, because he actually does say that like his name is a name that he chose, so it means something, and that's
Right.
why he chose the Doctor, because he wanted to help people basically. And if he breaks that pact, he'd have to change his name. Actually, it comes up
Or-
a lot in Matt
Yeah,
Smith.
she.
it does. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, he is just known
Or
as the
she.
Doctor, and Doctor Who is just kind of the name of the show, and then kind of has become a running. I don't know if gag is quite the right word, but
Right.
they do something with it every once in a while.
For those who didn't know, now they do.
Exactly. Well,
So-
they don't really know anything more.
Yep. So the new Doctor Who,
Yes.
which I know much better than the old Doctor Who, because it's really the only 3 episodes of
gonna
Doctor
say.
Who I've ever watched,
Right.
clearly leans really hard in terms of social justice. has this always been the case for Doctor Who? I mean, science fiction has often been used as a vehicle to sort of critique society. Is this true of like Doctor Who historically, that it has this sort of leftist social justice emphasis in the stories it tells?
I have seen I've seen all of the modern series. I have seen some of the classic series, just to put it in perspective. I've seen maybe one episode of each Doctor's run. So I've at least seen almost every Doctor. I haven't seen the movie with the 8th Doctor, but with that said, I can speak more to the modern series. And yes, since the modern series has come about, social justice and inclusivity and diversity has been a big issue. I mean, you have aliens from all kind of planets. Even in the classic series, you've had aliens from everywhere. You've had people from different time periods, and I guess from what I've seen of the classic series, even there's been like I would say a sense of equality to it. I think you notice it more now in modern times. But you've had characters who are bisexual. You have characters, who are lesbians. Bill Capaldi's last companion before he left the show, was a lesbian. So you've had different kinds of characters with different racial backgrounds.
Martha was the black woman that was the Doctor's companion.
Exactly.
Under Tennant. I do say that it does feel like with Whitaker, they're even more going the social particularly in terms of diversity and inclusion with the much larger cast of companions. It feels like they are. To me, it feels like they're doing more with that than they have done in the past.
Right, and as you know, because we talk about this when we teach comic books sometimes, the diversity sometimes is hard to pull off when you're talking about alien races and diversity. Right. It can be a dodge in a way. And clearly in expanding sort of the group, his entourage.
Yes, companions is what they're usually referred to as. The
Doctor
Doctor has his companions.
The show leans really hard on social justice, which is kind of where I have some questions to ask you to see like how you felt kind of about the show.
Yeah, I really liked what they were doing with the expanded cast with Whitaker's companion.
I had mixed responses to it. I was not completely sold on a couple of them.
Okay,
but let's start. I guess we should start with the Doctor.
Yeah,
who is a woman for the first time, at least on television.
Right.
I assume there could have been female doctors in the canon somewhere else.
Well, in the first episode, the Doctor mentions something about it's been a long time since I've bought women's clothes, which sort of implies something in the past. I don't know if that's a reference to an earlier episode where he may have dressed up.
Right. Yeah, and then even in Sunday's episode, she made a reference that she had been a sister or was a sister previously. Okay. So there's kind of been hints and insinuations, but this is the first time we're seeing on screen.
The first time that we've actually seen one. So there's a clear emphasis then in terms of female empowerment in this season and in casting the Doctor as a woman. And I think Whitaker is unbelievably great.
Yeah, she was fantastic. Like I really
I don't know much about Doctor Who, but she feels like the Doctor.
Yeah,
almost as soon as she shows up on screen.
Yes. And, I 100% agree. Like she very much feels like that, and I like the way they've done. Like to me, she reminds me a lot of Matt Smith in kind of the kind of manic energy that she has at times. I like that they've sort of carried over the bit from Capaldi of how she doesn't really like the military, doesn't really like. She mentions in the first episode only idiots carry knives. Yeah, I think it's the first one she mentions she doesn't like organizations with acronyms.
Yeah, that was a good one.
And I want to come back to that.
So I like
that
they have carried over some of the traits, and yet there's also the ways in which that she seems pretty uniquely her own. Doctor as well.
And not only does she kind of own sort of her own personality, but she as soon as she shows up, when she kind of falls from the sky, she's immediately in charge.
Yeah.
Right? This isn't like, even when she's not at full power, even when she doesn't have full knowledge, she's still like definitively the one that takes charge.
Which is normal for the Regeneration episodes. Is there's almost always they're still cooking in a sense throughout the episode.
Right, but it's different because it's a woman this time. Right. And so to me it feels like it has an extra layer of kind of meaning to it in having her show up. Now, when she accidentally transports them all into like the vacuum of space at the end of the first episode, like that's a wee bit of a mistake.
And she realizes it. You could tell on her face, and she's horrified. And she's like, "How do I fix this?" You know?
Yeah, because that's a big one. But like throughout the first episode, it's women who run towards danger, and it's men who don't. I mean, it sort of gets Grace killed.
Yeah.
And it keeps Graham alive, right? Because she's the one that has the courage to run too.
Right.
Whereas he kind of stands.
That was the one
back.
part of the premiere that I was sort of disappointed in, just in the fact that all of the pre-show trailers and everything, it only showed Graham and Yaz and Ryan, I think is his name.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, so something's happening to Grace in this episode because she is not in any other.
I had not watched anything, so I didn't know.
Yeah, I saw the
what
trailers.
was
I was like, oh, she's either going to be, stay behind or something. And then when they just showed like she's the one running in danger all the time, I'm like, oh, it's going to end poorly for her.
Yeah.
No, I figured that out too. Like you said, she wasn't in any of the other promotional materials, and I'm like, the thing is, out of all of them, she's definitely the one to run into danger. She's a nurse, so she had that helpful vibe, which actually kind of works. I mean, you have the doctor, and a nurse working together for a part of that episode, so there was a nice like synergy there. And I knew something bad was gonna happen. But I kind of like how she still matters. Like her influence on Ryan and Graham is still carrying forward, and the show is dealing very much with the grief aspect of that.
And I liked the naturalness of her and Graham's relationship.
Yeah.
Because that was one of the things that really one of the things I liked about just kind of the expanded cast is that it clearly represented a kind of diversity and kind of inclusion, but it didn't feel artificial in the way that it often can be. Like
absolutely.
One of the things I think that helped with that, and I give Chibnall a lot of credit for writing the episode, is it's a long time before the Doctor shows up in the first episode.
Yeah.
And so he got a lot of depth established with all of the characters.
Yeah.
I felt prior to the Doctor showing up. So
yeah, and I really liked the Graham Grace dynamic in a relationship too. I'm not quite so sure about the Graham Ryan.
In terms of their conflict?
It feels to me a little pat. As I kind of like the tension that they're generating between the two.
Yeah.
Hasn't I don't think developed into something that feels really kind of fully fleshed out or quite human yet.
Yeah. I could see that.
It feels a bit like a device to me. And of course, I mean, back on female empowerment real quickly. Yaz wants to do more as a cop, right?
Yeah.
She's clearly capable of being more.
Right.
Yeah.
It's the system that kind of holds her back.
And I like the way
that
they kind of set it up as it's a product of her youth, her gender, and her race is kind of all kind of boiled into why she sort of struggled. Yeah, that I really liked that. I think that was one of the kind of particularly with Yaz, but with all of them, it felt like there was a nice intersectionality that felt natural, not artificial to me.
That's, I think, where it gets most complicated in this show for me, is sometimes it feels a little teachy, preachy.
That's kind of part of Doctor Who, though, to be honest
and
with you. It started as a kid's show, actually.
Yeah, and they still maintain that it's somewhat of a kid's show. And one of the articles that I read talked about how in Whitaker that it was really returning to one of the show's primary purposes is not just as a kids show, but as a kids educational show.
Yeah,
they were talking about that particularly in relationship to the Rosa episodes.
Yeah.
There's elements of that too, that there is somewhat of a didactic purpose.
Yeah.
That I think Chibnall is getting the show back to, that I don't know that we've had for a while.
No,
right, and I think dramatically, like if it's made for kids, it's a different thing, obviously. But dramatically, we've had this this conversation a lot on the show. I think it's better typically to show it in the moving picture than it is to tell it in the moving picture, and that when it becomes obviously didactic, like we're stopping to kind of deliver a lecture on diversity here. It doesn't work nearly as well as an organic entourage around the Doctor works. Right? Like watching them as human beings interacting with each other in really authentic ways. Yeah. That's a really powerful message about diversity.
And that's what I felt like all of the characters felt really, like within the first 15 minutes of the episode, I was like, okay, they just felt really human to me. Ryan struggles with his disability. I thought I really liked.
Can we talk about Ryan next?
Yeah.
Because I really like the idea of, having somebody with a disability on the show, like this dyspraxia.
Yep.
Is not something I know a lot about.
Right.
It's a really human opening where he's trying to ride a bike. Like he's an adult, but he's still a little kid, and his parents, or his mom and his stepdad, are there. Like it's a very, like I agree with you. Like
grandmom and step-granddad.
Oh, sorry. Are like very, very human. You know, like very, very human in who they are. But it feels to me like after the first couple of episodes, that the disability so far is there after that opening scene, which really I think makes him seem very human.
Right, and then comes back at the end of the episode.
Right, but it
Yeah.
becomes something later on that he overcomes. Like I don't like ladders, but he climbs a ladder when he has to.
He does.
Right,
He climbs a
absolutely.
second ladder when he has to. And so, at a minimum, it feels like it needs to be more fully developed to be more than just a plot device at this point.
Yeah, I mean, I liked.
That's my concern.
Yeah, I
with
mean,
Ryan.
I had the same concern, and I don't really remember much of his disability coming up in Rosa.
I don't
I don't
either.
either.
But
And so
there was a ladder in the first one and a ladder in the
then
second
one.
one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And part of me, I kind of like the fact, because I looked at it as, because we've talked about it with Scroy.
Yeah, a
and
lot.
kind of the idea of like the super crypt, that we're supposed
Right.
to celebrate the ones that overcome.
Right.
Number one, I like the fact that particularly in the first episode, he didn't overcome it. He was still
Right.
struggling with it.
Yeah.
I also like that, particularly with Rosa, he's not defined by it. Like, that's not his one
Agreed.
thing. So I liked,
absolutely.
I liked the
Yeah.
way that they kind of got away from that, like, as his trait, because that's the part that could
But there was
most easily devolve into parody.
But there was a bit of overcoming.
Yeah.
And it's
There
really
is.
it's really hard to do right.
Yeah.
Because it needs to be present, but it can't define him.
Yeah.
It needs to limit him, but it can't victimize him.
Right.
Like, I'm not saying it's an easy thing
Right, and
to do, but there was in the first couple of episodes
Yeah.
kind of an overcoming thing. I mean, they go
bit.
back to the bike at the end, and he still can't ride the bike.
Still can't ride
Yeah.
the bike.
But again, it just kind of makes his overcoming in moment of crisis even more super heroic in a way.
Yeah, I mean, I
And then
think they're
yeah.
doing a better job than some.
Yeah,
I'll
but
be
it-
curious to see how it evolves over the show.
I
but-
really feel
Yeah,
like we
same
need a
here.
season
yeah.
of Ryan.
Because my biggest fear was in the opening episode when the little bit of regeneration energy like comes out of her and floats away, and I'm like, please God, don't go into Ryan and fix it.
And fix it.
I didn't even think about
I thought
that.
I was
Yeah,
like
I'm glad they do that.
oh, and I'm like, okay, clearly that's coming back. 'Cause I'm like, there's a floating bit of regeneration energy out there. I think that's
Yeah.
good. But I was like, please God, don't let that be. Don't give the magic like, oh, he's better now because the doctor healed him. So
But with Ryan, I wish I felt more of the relationship he has with his step grandpa too. It feels to me kind of stock
yeah,
at this point. Like he's a guy that I don't feel like is maybe quite as well fleshed out in the first couple of episodes as the others.
yeah,
But
I could see
That's
that.
fair. Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
my take. I mean, there's tons of potential there.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I have to assume that they're trying to establish him and setting him up for more.
Right, yeah.
I mean, he's trying to I mean, I could be wrong on this, but I think this is his first time away from home.
Yeah.
In the most recent episode, all three of the companions firmly said to the doctor, "We want to go with you. We want to travel with you." And even though they've been traveling with her up until now, it wasn't necessarily a choice. It was a matter of circumstances.
Sure.
She accidentally, put them in the space. But all three of them came to her and said, "No, we want to go with you. We want to go and explore the world." And I think that's gonna affect all their characters. Like, I think it'll help, Ryan grow. Because I'm with you too. Like, I don't want him to be defined by his disability. I
Right.
would like them to see it address it more. Because really, they were doing it more in the first two episodes. They've kind of gotten away from that. But then again, maybe it's like a progression where he's learning to live with it and learning to overcome it. But I would like to see them address it too. I wouldn't be surprised if we see him ride that bike at some point. I think it's just going to take a lot to get there, and it's about the journey. It's not the destination. It's about so how is he going to get to that point?
And I hope you're right, because I think you're right. Like, there's loads of potential in Ryan.
Yeah.
But there's potential for it to go
Oh yeah,
wrong
Right.
too. Even well-intentioned multiculturalism
Right.
can yield some less than
yeah. And I think part of
good
it too
results.
is that, I'm pretty sure the first two episodes were written by Chibnall. Rosa was written by another person. And I'm wondering how much of the fact that we didn't see much of Ryan's disability in Rosa is because that's something Chibnall is really dedicated to, but maybe not carried through by other writers as much.
Interesting. And that would be an unfortunate.
Yeah, so it'll be because I was kind of like I'm thinking about Rosa, like there really wasn't much with Ryan's condition in Rosa. I mean, there's plenty of other stuff to deal with Ryan, obviously, but yeah. So we'll see. But I was really encouraged. I was pretty apprehensive about Chibnall going into the show, just because his track record on he's written a handful of Doctor Who episodes before, and generally they were, I would say, mixed in results.
Yeah.
So I wasn't really sure how he was gonna. I had some apprehension about him as running the show. But so far, I think he's doing a great job.
Yeah, I was thrilled to hear that he was going to run the show because he wrote a show called Broadchurch.
Yeah, I've seen the Grace Point, the version that was on Fox. I haven't seen Broadchurch.
Yeah, Grace Point was good actually, but Broadchurch is phenomenal. To me, that's the superior one. I've seen 2 out of the 3 seasons. The first season is probably one of the best mysteries on television I've ever seen. It was so well constructed. It came together
with
so
David
well. It was
Tennant.
tight. Yeah, with David Tennant in it.
And Jodie Whittaker. What about? Yeah, they were both in it.
Exactly. Yeah, actually, when I heard Jodie Whittaker was going to be the new Doctor, I was ecstatic because she is phenomenal in Broadchurch. She's an amazing actress. She has some heavy material to work with in Broadchurch because she played the mother of a boy who was murdered, and the community is mourning this murder, but also kind of like trying to figure out who the killer was, but reluctant to at the same time. And she did a phenomenal job with that, which you see her acting ability in the show.
Yeah, my hope was that, the Chibnall, because I think he mainly wrote Broadchurch in between, like he did Doctor Who episodes, and then Broadchurch kind of fell in between, and now he's coming back to Doctor Who. And so my hope was that the Broadchurch, he was going to bring some of the Broadchurch Chibnall into the show, and so far it seems like he has. So I also like the fact that they've kind of, we were talking about this before the show, I liked the fact that, because we always get to that moment where the Doctor offers, them to come with him on the TARDIS, and then we fall into kind of the, going to different time periods each episode. I liked the fact that the first 2 episodes, particularly the first one, kind of took away the TARDIS and sort of put her in a much more different situation, because those episodes like Blink, where you kind of have artificial limits placed on the Doctor, have turned into some of the best episodes.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I liked the fact that the first 2 episodes were not, they've met the Doctor, they've had an adventure, and now we're into the, we're traveling with the Doctor, to various different times. And I think the first episode in particular benefited from the fact that they put those limits. I think Chibnall said they're not using Daleks. I think he might have said they're not using Cybermen either.
A lot of people have gotten tired of those 2 villains just because the modern series has relied on them quite a bit.
Yeah, the general sense is they're trying to avoid the modern series villains. So I like that they're kind of setting themselves up setting some sort of narrative limits to get more creative.
So I like the idea of the limits on the Doctor, which I want to come back to, but I've got one more point I wanted to make about sort of the multicultural, social justice-y aspect of the show. And it was my favorite, not surprisingly, like as a Quaker, I guess, is the overtly pacifist stance. Like the effort to create multicultural teams and groups that kind of go on adventures together is not new in any particular way. Like you see that writ large throughout pop culture. Like it's kind of all around us, done well and not so well, of course. But in the States in particular, you almost never see such an overtly sort of pacifist approach to the problem. Like I love her insistence that like people that carry knives are stupid or that guns never solve.
Right. She gets mad at the guy that knocks the Tim Shaw off the crane and said you had no right to do that.
Right. Yeah. That when they get to that game planet, she wants to find out what devastated it. Like it's not okay just to see devastation. Like you need to respond to it. Like she never looks away from the violence and the ethnic cleansing and sort of the disaster that's all around her. Although that the whole story was carved into the floor was a bit much for me. Yeah. Like that was like... I mean, I suppose you could carve it into the floor. But she has no patience for people who just want to win.
I like that,
which to me is like such an un-American attitude. And yet, if you really want to be pacifist, if you really want to revision or envision a different kind of world to live in, you have to give up the winning and losing. You have to.
And again, that's part of the reason.
Thinking about life in that way.
Before that, it's one of the reasons why her title is the Doctor and why she chose that was because she's not. In fact, even the one Doctor that participated in the Time War is not really considered a doctor. It's the War Doctor.
Yeah.
And doesn't really.
So they don't usually shoot people, or
she doesn't. The Doctor.
But I'm talking about previous Doctors. If they shot, knifed.
It depends.
Like the Doctor, he's had an anti-gun stance. He has used guns, but not usually to make a point. Like not necessarily to injure somebody.
Okay.
No, but he has been very anti-gun. He is a pacifist.
Yeah.
One of Capaldi's best moments in his entire run was a speech about war, actually. it actually gives me chills to listen to it.
Yeah, they did. There was a article or something online about like the top 10 Doctor speeches, and I think Capaldi's was number one. So
yeah,
yeah. Well, and it's been. I think even in the Matt Smith years, it was sort of a point that he was and carrying over from Tennant is that he was becoming much more of a feared force in the universe. And it was kind of a point of, I think Riversong sort of made the point of that was getting away from what the Doctor was supposed to be.
Right.
Becoming sort of this thing that everyone is scared of. And those moments where the Doctor became really scary and kind of threatening was getting away from what the Doctor was supposed to be.
Interesting. I just, the
so
idea...
it's built into kind of the character.
And that they're on a planet that's been destroyed by people, right? Like by people forced to create technology that's ever more deadly and destructive. Like there's this fundamental message that like almost all the damage that humans suffer is inflicted by other human beings, right? Like it's not environmental forces beyond our control. It's like the things we do to each other. And so, I mean, like I'm going to complain in a minute about like teachy preachy too much, but this part of it really spoke to me. And I like that she doesn't stop to deliver a speech about it. That you see it more in like an aside here or an action there as well.
Right. Well,
although
was
she gives a good speech,
Capaldi's speech
good for it too.
Was that the speech he gave right before he regenerated, or was that a different speech?
No. I think there was an episode where they brought back the Zygons, and there were two Claras essentially, and the Zygon took on the appearance of Clara.
Right.
And there was they were they were talking in a room, and like he pretty much was just saying, you're gonna like fire on each other, and the one thing I remember the most from the speech was he said, basically you're gonna take your time doing what you should, like you're gonna do all these things to each other when what you really should have done in the first place is sit down and talk. And just the way he delivered and the way he said it.
Well, because I know his closing monologue was sort of emphasis on the idea of just be kind, like that would solve a lot of the problems. So that kind
together.
of because I really liked Capaldi in the role of the Doctor. I don't think he had the best written episodes. I think if Moffat was already kind of on his way out with Capaldi.
That's actually what I think too. Yeah.
And I think if Moffat had been at the top of his game, I think Capaldi would have been even more well regarded as the Doctor. Because the bit I love about Capaldi is that he was a Doctor Who fan as a kid. I've watched like some Graham Norton interviews. Like they did, they actually have books that are on the fan club of Doctor Who. They have Capaldi's letters that he wrote to the head of the BBC. It's the letter they talked about was one where he asked the head of the BBC or the head of Doctor Who to replace the guy in charge of the fan club with Capaldi himself. And so the woman at the BBC like writes a very nice letter to Capaldi saying, we've already got someone, but then she writes a letter to the I think he's the secretary of the group, basically talking about how sad and pathetic Capaldi is, and that she wishes a Dalek would just exterminate him.
That's terrible.
It is the funniest thing.
That's awful.
Oh my God.
How old was he?
Oh, he was. I think someone asks him that, and he says 26 or something like that as a joke. I think he must have been like in his teens. But it's I really like Capaldi in the role. I just don't think he had the best writing.
No, I agree. Like, Stephen Moffat was the showrunner prior to Chris Chibnall taking over. Stephen Moffat he's written some of the most memorable episodes in Doctor Who. He wrote one called Blink, which has become legendary. He took over the show along with Matt Smith. Every couple of years, the show is reborn. Basically, you get a new Doctor, and you tend to get
every 2 or 3 usually. And
sometimes you get like a new cast, a new behind the scenes crew at the same time, and we're seeing that with Jodie Whittaker and Chris Chibnall. And the same thing happened in around 2010, 2011 with Stephen Moffat and Matt Smith, and then Stephen Moffat continued with Capaldi. But yeah, I'm definitely with you. I think that by the time Capaldi came into it, Capaldi is an incredible actor, and he did a lot with the role, but he delivered more than the scripts often had in them. I think Moffat became very burned out by that point in time, and it wasn't his best effort. So when he said he was hanging it up, I was actually glad for it at that point.
Yeah, it felt, particularly the last of Capaldi's seasons, I felt was weaker in terms of the writing. Like, the finale was spectacular, but everything up until then, I was like, this just doesn't feel
See, I feel a little bit of the opposite because I really enjoyed. We've talked about the Doctor having different companions through his run. Capaldi had a companion named Bill, who I've said I think she was the first like lesbian companion of the Doctor. She was also an incredible person. She was like a regular human being, but she had such a curiosity and knowledge that it made her a good fit with the Doctor. And Bill came after a companion called Clara, who is not my favorite.
Oh, see, Clara is my favorite.
Oh,
I love Clara.
See, yeah, I really can't stand Clara. And she's a character who initially started out as a mystery, and then they kept her on and realized they had to develop her as a person. So the character, in my opinion, has been very inconsistent throughout her time with the Doctor. And I do think it's because she started out as a mystery, and then they had to develop her as a character. So for me, Capaldi's final season, which was with Bill, a different companion, was refreshing. You got to see more of him. I think his doctor starts out as very grouchy and grumpy. He's reminiscent of the earlier Doctors.
Oh, yeah, he's very reminiscent of
the earlier Doctors were grumpy old men, basically.
Oh, yeah.
And he came into it after you have these young, attractive guys like David Tennant and Matt Smith. Matt Smith was actually the youngest actor to play the Doctor, so you had a big change with Capaldi. It didn't necessarily always go well with fans. I think it was a big change. But if you stuck with the show, Capaldi has some brilliant moments in it.
Well, I think particularly fans that knew Eccleston, Tennant, and Matt Smith and weren't used to, like, Doctor being an old man. Like,
Absolutely.
Capaldi is very different. I mean, I really like Capaldi.
Yeah.
But I could see where people were sort of like, wait, no, what happened to, like, young...
Nobody likes grumpy old men.
No,
yeah, and
no.
he throughout his...
Maybe that's what we should call it. We should retitle the podcast.
Grumpy old man.
It's probably copyrighted.
Probably, yeah.
And maybe not the best way to brand oneself.
Yeah,
No.
it's a little on the nose.
Yeah, throughout Capaldi's time on the show, he eventually became the Doctor who, like you said in his final speech, be kind, be courageous. It took him a long journey to get there, which I think is, if you've been a fan with the show, it was good to see. He just didn't have the best scripts or, in my opinion, necessarily the best companions along the way.
So speaking of companions, I'd like to talk about Rosa Parks, who's not really a companion, but the third episode was dedicated to sort of her story. And I've got a couple of complaints.
Okay.
Actually, I'm looking at my list. 3.5 complaints.
Okay.
About the historical treatment. Number one, and I will stand by this forever. This show had the worst Southern accents I have ever heard. They were terrible.
I can think of maybe one that would be worse.
What?
Oh, Amanda's husband, Chris.
Yeah.
Despises the Southern accents on Walking Dead.
Okay,
Really?
I don't know.
Where you
Walking,
also
okay.
have British actors doing
But
Southern
I gotta
accents.
say, like it's I don't know what they studied to do Southern accents, but they are atrocious. I just want to be clear: our UK listeners can never ever complain about Patrick's British accent again, because
Blimey!
it's brilliant in comparison to what the Rosa
We don't
Parks.
have any UK listeners according to the stats on the website.
Blimey.
Well, you might after this.
yeah.
Doctor Who is,
Hello,
you
Governor.
know,
That's
international.
why
so-
we don't have any. You won't stop doing
So,
that.
was that your half complaint or was that the full complaint?
No, that's 150%
Okay.
complaint.
Oh.
Like,
I
that
wasn't sure if that was the half or not.
No,
Okay.
no, like their accent work was atrocious. I'm sorry, like it was like Kevin Costner in the Cuban Missile Crisis movie trying to do the
JFK?
yeah, it's like no, it wasn't JFK. It was the it's like 13 Days or whatever.
Oh, okay.
He tries to do like a Boston, Massachusetts-y kind of accent, and it is Kevin Costner and accents just don't connect well. Yeah, if you haven't seen it, you should. He's talking to his kid about his report card, and it is just unbelievable.
Benedict Cumberbatch trying to do a Boston accent in Black Mass. I love Benedict Cumberbatch. It's not a great accent.
Yeah, yeah. It can be difficult, but the Southern accent could have been done better.
Okay.
Number two, I really appreciate the general politics of the show, as I've said before, but this was the classic example of a bit too preachy-teachy to me. Now, obviously, it doesn't help that they feel the need that they need to remind their British viewers
Who Rosa Parks is?
who Rosa Parks is. So
The little bit of exposition.
So we get like a little bit, like we get like full stop. Here's the exposition on Rosa Parks, like written into dialogue that just feels like dialogue nobody would ever speak, right? It's just exposition.
Yeah.
It's just background.
Well, and then you get the bit at the end where they're watching like the video of her getting the the Congressional Medal of Honor or
Yeah.
whatever. That again felt a little
Right. And so, but you also get lectures built in the middle. For example, when they're in the hotel room and Yaz and Ryan have to flee out the bathroom window because the racist cop has shown up, and they're sitting in the alleyway talking to each other. And the whole point of that conversation is to make sure the audience understands that what Rosa Parks did then matters now. Right? That the oppression that she faced then continues to today. But to me, again, it feels so obviously like they're saying to the audience, hey, you, pay attention to this. Like, we're talking about Rosa Parks, but we're not talking only about Rosa Parks. Like, we're talking about profiling and all the intersectional stuff you're talking about with Yaz. You know, they both share their experiences and like, oh, so that's the connection. I don't think you need that. It just, to me,
I can see. I mean,
that's another moment where I feel like they're
I mean, one of the things that
just
really
whacking me over the head.
Yeah, I mean,
with
one
the
of the things that really struck me about the episode was watching it, and just in general, was as much of it being about sort of the Rosa Parks era.
Yeah,
it clearly reflected back on today.
Right.
In ways that. Yeah, the I didn't mind the conversation between Yaz and Ryan so much, but I can see your point in terms of it kind of was kind of putting the capper on something that maybe it didn't need to, because it was clear in what it was doing elsewhere without being so heavy-handed.
To me, and maybe I'm wrong, but like living in the world we live in, I don't think we need people to point out, like, hey, this still matters today. Like, hey, this isn't finished.
I actually think we do. I think after events like Charlottesville.
Yeah, but the show's doing that, right? What I'm saying is in the show, like saying, hey, this is what we're doing. That's what doesn't need to be done. I want the Rosa Parks episode to be made. I want people to say it's not done. But I feel like it derails it artistically a little bit when they have to stop and kind of do the teaching moment. Like, it's there. Like, I don't think you need it. It's there.
Yeah, I think there's ways in which that they, and I think the exposition bit kind of speaks to it too, is that I can see ways in which that they might have trusted their audience a little bit more. And I think that's maybe where...
And we can argue about whether the audience should be trusted or can be trusted.
Yeah.
Like, there's a chance maybe I'm wrong. Like, maybe they do need, like, these moments of stop where they say, here's the point. Man, I sure hope they don't.
Well, but I think it also goes back to the idea of it being a kid's show as well.
Yeah.
It's a kid's,
I think maybe some of that is and a kid's educational show. I think maybe some of that stopping is a little more necessary.
As I watched it, I didn't think of it as a kid's show.
You wouldn't really think of it as a kid's show.
Yeah.
But that is still kind of how it's viewed in some ways.
Yeah, and I think because you said before about how they're making more of an effort this season to kind of take it back to being a kid's show in a way, and you can tell, and there are some violent moments, not necessarily in the Rosa Parks episode, but the first episode, the second episode, the way they're filming the violence is even different than how they filmed it in the past. They seem to be more careful about what they're showing, in my opinion.
Yes, yeah, I would agree.
So they want to make this show accessible to everybody, and the moment you're talking about with Yaz and Ryan, like, it didn't strike me as overly preachy. I could totally see
it. Just I'm super sensitive. Patrick will tell you to stuff like that too. You know, like
he's super sensitive to stuff like that.
No, but I totally see what you're saying about trusting your audience. That's the problem I have with some movies that I review.
Yes.
Actually, some movies talk down to the audience. Some movies don't think their audience is smart enough to get it. I don't think they were trying to do that in this case, but I can see how it would totally come across.
Yeah,
this way.
I think another place where I think they were trying to thread a needle a little bit.
Right.
My fear is
they might have overdone it a bit, but I can see why they were, to kind of make it more accessible to maybe audiences of all ages.
Right, but my fear is that when you get those obvious moments of kind of like preaching, that's the least effective way to get people to empathize with a problem or start to act to change a problem, right? Like, once I'm talking down to you, like once I'm condescending to you, don't understand that Rosa Parks' problems still continue today. Like, people who are not predisposed to think about the world like Doctor Who's creators are likely to shut down, I think. Does that make sense? That the more effective way of moving people is by telling a really, really artful story than it is to have the artful story interrupted by like these. I'm afraid that as soon as it becomes preaching, that there's a certain segment of Americans, let's say, who are like, ugh, more leftist Hollywood, more elitist preaching at me, telling me like why I'm racist or like what's wrong with me. So just an observation.
No, I
think we can
another,
disagree about it, but there were moments where I'm thinking that if that's the message they want to convey, it could have been done maybe a little more artfully.
Yeah, I mean, at the same time, I totally see. At the same time, I also find it hard to imagine Ryan and Yaz not having a conversation about what they're seeing.
That's the thing. I mean, I think they almost have to. They are the two characters.
And again, that's why I talk about like they had to thread a needle, and I think by and large it succeeded. But I can see your point in.
I do see your point.
The exposition bit, I agree with you. I was like, oh, it's the history lesson on Rosa Parks.
That's right. Like, now let's stop. It's like get out the old.
But also, I wonder how much of that is. I mean, to the American audience, Rosa Parks is known. I don't know how well that's known for a British audience.
To be quite honest with you, like I don't know how much of the American audience knows it. I'm not even saying they don't need it. It's just the way that it was done is just like a stop in a lecture as opposed to a show.
Yeah.
And I guess from being like a long time ish Doctor Who viewer, I was actually surprised because they don't necessarily factor in American figures a lot. This is a British show.
Well, I remember when Matt Smith in the second season when they went to America, like that was a big deal.
They actually filmed in Utah. Yeah, they never come to America.
They never come to America. Like that was a huge. Well, and even I remember when another episode of the Graham Norton show for the 50th anniversary special, he was shocked at the fact that anyone was watching the show outside of the UK. He's like, they're simulcasting this in like 50 countries over the world, and they're watching it in America. And Matt Smith is like, yeah, dude, it's got a huge global audience, but that's all really new to Doctor Who, and really in kind of the transition from Tennant to Smith, it seems like that's when that really happened.
Let me be clear again. I appreciate the ambition of what they're
trying
to achieve.
I see your point.
Here.
No, I see
have
what
some
you're saying.
questions about the execution
of
it, which brings me to my third complaint. Holy hell, they need to watch The Flash. Have they never heard of time ripples? Do they not understand?
It works differently in Doctor Who.
When they send some guy off to Vegas, that it's going to totally change his life, that every confrontation they have on the street, in Birmingham is sending people down, creating like entirely different future timelines. They're like, I thought The Flash was like, just like disdainful of timelines.
The other thing you've got to remember is the Doctor at this point is I can't even remember how many thousands of years old.
Yeah,
like he's been doing this and she's been doing this for a
long
time.
She should know better.
But she's got it on lockdown. Like she's good with Ryan and Yaz can do whatever they want. Because Ryan, when he sent the guy back, I'm like, what are you doing? Like that's a terrible idea.
Well, that's definitely going to rebound, right? At some point, that's coming back.
I think that guy. Yeah, I can't remember. Castor, whatever his name was.
Talk about
Crasco. That's what his name was.
A little bit. Again, children's show.
Yeah.
Okay, but like very stock sort of racist bad guy.
Oh yeah.
Kind of, very, very flat, I thought.
But also with a lot of, I mean, the vortex manipulator he wore, the prison that he's in, those are all huge parts of the Matt Smith era and the Tennant era Doctor Who. Yeah. So clearly there's stuff going on.
Yeah, and that's going back to
cool
Eccleston, actually. There's a character who's a big fan favorite called Captain Jack Harkness.
Right. He had the vortex manipulator.
He had the vortex manipulator, so this is stuff that's actually been carried out
Some Easter eggy
stuff,
which Allan loves Easter eggs.
Yeah, and I guess
not for me because I don't know the canon.
And then like what you're definitely putting out some good stuff here about the time travel element, but there's the show has, maybe it's been inconsistent about this in the modern series, but the show's made a point to say that there are fixed points in time, so there are fixed things in time that need to happen, that have to happen, they're going to happen no matter what. There are things that can change along the way, without destroying the universe, but then during the Matt Smith era, there was a big theme that time can be rewritten. So that tended to kind of negate some of the stuff before.
Well, and you see it
so they have leeway, I think.
And you see it somewhat in the episode too when the Doctor realizes that they have to stay on the bus. Like they can't leave the bus because now they have become part of the Rosa Parks moment. That is one of those fixed moments in time that
exactly.
don't mess with.
But don't get me started about how it is that they're part of that moment in time when they're like it just.
See what you should appreciate about
paradox,
Doctor Who.
I will throw my phone.
I'm not going to say paradox.
I will throw it at you.
I'm going to say That's the nice thing about Doctor Who is they acknowledge with the very idea of wibbly wobbly
I saw
timey
the
wire.
word paradox on this.
Because that's when in the episode that they use that phrase the first time, basically someone's asking this question, and the Doctor's like, "Oh, it's all kind of wibbly." Like they basically admit, so we are inconsistent, and just don't think about
we're
it
just
too
gonna
much.
own the fact that we're flexible.
So the science of the Doctor Who
is fuzzier.
universe is just really fuzzy. It's not like the Flash where they stand at a board and they draw lines and arrows.
I'm not sure Doctor Who's ever drawn the continuum on a board.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think Doctor Who has sort of embraced the fact that they're like, time travel probably worked this way when Moffat was writing. It's probably going to work a little differently under Chibnall.
And you know what? Like I'm okay
I think they
with
acknowledge that.
if they acknowledge it and they're just like, it doesn't really work.
Yeah, I think
right, because it doesn't really work. But okay. The problem with the Flash, of course, is that they pretend like it.
They're trying to make it work too much.
Yeah,
right?
it's.
Yeah, you should like Doctor Who because they're kind of like you in the sense of like, we're just not going to really worry about it.
Right.
Fair enough. I have a final half complaint.
Now say, we've got.
So my complaints were worst Southern accents ever.
Correct.
A little too teachy preachy.
Right.
Watch the Flash.
You hate time travel.
Yeah.
But we actually turned that one into not a complaint because now you like
Okay,
Doctor
so
Who.
we're down to 2.5, and even the half is not really a full half, but something I want to talk about. Parks is to me a really interesting historical character, like somebody worth studying, because she's so misunderstood generally. Right? People generally see Rosa Parks as an activist, but an accidental activist. Right? She was too tired to give up her seat that day on the bus. And in telling that myth, we really deprive Rosa Parks of the agency in her life, right? That Rosa Parks was a longtime activist before that moment on the bus that sort of thrust her into the public spotlight.
And even the moment on the bus was somewhat of a planned
Absolutely.
activity.
Like
it wasn't the accident that history has kind of
the African-American community had been planning for an incident. Like they were waiting for the right moment.
Right.
Because like that bus boycott doesn't happen overnight,
right?
If you haven't really put thought into it, right? Like the way in which they manage the year that follows, where they can't take the bus, is amazing. But it's not an accident, right? Again, like none of this is an accident. She's part of an activist community, and you get a glimpse of that.
They gesture towards
which I really appreciated in this episode.
I like that a lot.
That there is that meeting, right?
Yeah,
that
with her and Dr. King.
And you see her on the bus in 42 as well. You get a sense that she's long, been an activist. But for me, I'd like a little bit more of that. Like for the guy who's been complaining about how it's beating you over the head. This is the point I think people are most likely to miss in the episode
so
about Rosa Parks.
So have you just introduced a paradox into the conversation?
But and then in that way, the way in which Ryan inspires her in a way in this episode rubbed me a little bit the wrong way because, and I'm probably being way too academic. Rebecca,
so where was the moment where Ryan? I'm trying to remember Ryan inspiring her. Where was
he gives her talking outside?
Yeah, like they're sitting on the porch afterwards. Like you're going to do great things, And as she gets arrested and she's walking and you see her out the bus window, she looks at Ryan and she gives him kind of that knowing look.
Yeah,
is how I read it. And to me, there's a moment that runs the risk of again denying Rosa Parks her agency. Right? It's not Ryan. It's not people that came back into the past that talked Rosa Parks into this moment of courage.
Yeah.
But can't you read it in reverse? Like he may have encouraged her, but she also saw potential in him. That's why she invited him back to her house. I mean, so maybe it's like it kind of goes both ways when they're looking at each other.
I guess.
Especially if we think he has more potential to give, which I do believe he does.
Yeah, no, I think he does, and I think his time with Rosa Parks will change him. It's the way in which her time with him changed her.
Yeah, well, but I think part of it is
a little. I think again, it's not a full complaint, but it's this historical concern that I always have about the civil rights movement in this country, that it's told in a way that denies and ignores the agency of lots of people that we never talk about.
Yeah, well, I think part of it too is, I mean, the way it's maybe somewhat of a dodge is that the entire purpose of what they're doing is to preserve what actually happened.
Right.
And so in a way, the show maybe it does some, but maybe not enough to show that activist past. But I would say in a way that it's not really that Ryan inspired her. It's just the conversation that they had and she's doing what she would have done anyways.
Maybe,
Yeah,
but I
I
think
mean,
I think
he
But
was
it's a
showing
bit of a
admiration.
narrative
but
dodge. I'll
you
admit.
could, and especially given the way that my sense of how most Americans think about Rosa Parks' story, it's very easy, I think, for them to slip to that kind of understanding.
Yeah.
And then there's the whole paradox of she inspired him so that he could come back in time to inspire her, so that she could inspire him
Yeah, you
to
don't
come
wanna think
back in
about it too
time to
much.
inspire. And I'm like,
Tends to.
the Flash,
Wibbly-wo-
people.
It's wibbly wobbly, timey wimey.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, there's like that part is inevitably going to just piss me off.
Yeah, well, because you
right?
hate time
Because,
travel
yes,
and all
it just-
things it involves.
It absolutely drives me
It makes
nuts.
as much sense as Lupa.
But beyond those 3.5, now 2.5 complaints, like there's a lot of really good stuff in here.
No, I got to say, like the I haven't seen the most recent episode, but the first 3 episodes were really, number one, I put Whitakers Regeneration episode up there with the best of the modern era Who's.
Yes.
Like, it's as good as Matt Smith's, if not even a little bit. I'd probably put it on par with Matt Smith's. It's probably better than Capaldi's.
Yeah. Yeah.
Tenants I watched in reruns, so I didn't really have that experience. But it is a really good episode, and these first 3 episodes have been really, really solid. And particularly, like we talked about earlier, that Moffat kind of seemed to be like fading in the last year. It's nice to see kind of a Who that is returning more to form.
A lot of the reviews are picking up on that too. That the show feels sort of
Fresh.
fresher. Like, and
It feels much fresher.
Well, I mean,
And just-
not Davies. Moffat was on there for what, 5 years?
like
5 or 6. Well, I mean, 5 or 6 seasons, but some of them were spread wide apart. He was on there for a long time.
Because he did come in around, like, I think technically Matt Smith's first season was 2011.
Okay.
And Capaldi's last season was last year. But you're at least 6 years.
Yeah.
But it's weird to see how the seasons come out. They actually took a year off before Capaldi's last season with his companion Bill, because they knew it was going to be Moffat's last season and Capaldi, so they wanted to put extra time into it, which I think was smart on one hand, but on the other hand, as a fan, I hated it because we had a break in Doctor Who, and there were these weird statistics coming out, like Doctor Who memorabilia sales fell, and of course it did, because you didn't have the show on to get people to be like, hey, I'm going to go buy this. So I think it helped, but also hurt in a way, and I think people were ready for something new by that point. So
And I know there was a lot of apprehension of which Chibnall are we going to get. Are we going to get Broadchurch Chibnall, or are we going to get the Chibnall that used to write for Doctor Who and was a little more mixed? So, but overall, I'm really excited by the new Doctor Who season so far.
which brings me to another question: is the sonic screwdriver in the Toy Hall of Fame?
ooh,
No, it's
probably
not a toy.
not.
They don't make it as a toy.
They do.
must.
You can buy a Sonic.
You can buy,
Screwdriver.
like,
It's
every
like a Harry
Doctor's
Potter
incarnation.
wand,
Yeah.
right? Or
Oh, yeah,
a
they've
Ben
got-
Kenobi lightsaber.
They have a Sonic screwdriver that you can actually use as a remote for your TV.
Wait, for real? Wow, I've been missing out.
Yeah, no, I don't have it, but I saw it. There's one that you can actually use as a remote for your TV. I
Sometimes-
think it's either the Tennant or the Smith screwdriver.
In some ways, the Doctor's more interesting to me without the screwdriver, because the screwdriver seems to give so many answers.
Oh, it is. It's so,
Yeah.
that it
between
becomes.
that and the
Cynicist.
TARDIS, like it's.
And I get that that's
so
just
full
part of
like.
like if you're going to watch Doctor Who, you just sort of.
Well, even the making of the Sonic, that was one of the things in the premiere that did bother me. I'm like, did she just build a Sonic screwdriver in 21st century Earth? Because I'm assuming she used some of the alien stuff, but I'm like, that doesn't seem possible.
So that she could fight a
I
blue
think
guy
she
with like
did,
teeth
yeah,
all
she's
over his
I
face.
did like Tim Shaw in the teeth. That was creepy.
Yeah.
Really, I found it goofy. Like I found it more funny. I found it more kid show like
Well,
than I did creepy.
I thought it was creepy.
Yeah, the
Did you guys see the Wil Wheaton commentary? The one that I DVR'd had like a special commentary.
the season premiere?
Oh, they did like
Yeah,
a
the
special
season
edition.
premiere.
Yes, I did, yeah.
I did not
Yeah.
see that.
I did. Well, I actually there
was
were
a-
2 different sets of commentaries, and I have both of them.
Yeah,
because
I
they
saw.
DVR'd
I
both.
saw like it was
The
it
Wil
was-
Wheaton group was a weird group.
There was
though,
Wil
like-
Wheaton, and there was a physicist.
so?
No, actually, no. Wil Wheaton
they-
wasn't on the one that I saw.
Yeah, they weren't very engaging. Like
Yeah.
they would ask this. It was kind of a flat experience overall.
I've watched like various Doctor Who like pre-episode specials, and they always strike me as a little bit flat.
I mean, Wil Wheaton had real enthusiasm
Yeah, no,
for
he,
it.
he
he's
was
a-
the
yeah.
best one
Well,
out
yeah,
of all the
But the others
commentators,
just
I
felt
thought, yeah.
like kind of flat in
Yeah.
their response.
Yeah, they used to have specials about Doctor Who. They actually had more specials on when Matt Smith was the Doctor. I'm not sure why that was, but the people who they would get to comment for that were actually really good, and
Yeah.
they didn't have any of them for this time
Yeah.
around. So maybe people were just busy or something.
Yeah. I'm
30
sorry,
minutes?
Rich and Allan are doing.
0.
No, we're running out of
All right,
time.
time.
Oh.
Well,
I forgot to take
that makes
7
sense on an
minutes.
episode related to
Oh,
Doctor Who.
No.
That we're running out of time.
Did we miss anything, Rebecca, that you wanted to talk about?
Just in terms of recent like first episodes, like first episodes for a Doctor, you know, like part of the Doctor's ability is that he regenerates. That's how the character's been able to stay fresh for 50 years. You have a new actor come in and take over. It's still the same character, but they add their own spin to it. And Jodie Whittaker's first episode, I think, was probably one of the best first episodes for a Doctor in the modern series. I actually think Matt Smith's first episode is the best, but hers might be equal with
I
it.
put
It
them
might
right about.
surpass
I
it
put
in
them
time.
right about even with each other. Like it's hard for me to say which one is better. They're both really,
Yeah.
really solid
Yeah,
episodes.
I think I have to agree with you there. It's hard for me now at this point to pick one over
Yeah.
the other. They're both so solid, and they do a great job of introducing each's respective version
Yeah.
to the show.
How about the Hugh Jackman
What?
Doctor?
Wait, what?
What?
Ben Eccleston?
Christopher
I'm
Eccleston?
just trying to pretend like I'm
Christopher
part of the
Eccleston?
conversation
Yeah, I
at
was
this
gonna say,
point.
what are you talking about?
I'm making up names of people
Yeah.
that could have
No.
played the Doctor.
Yeah, okay. That's what I'm
I was
like.
like, Hugh
Wait,
Jackman.
no, 'cause I know I would know he's.
Was that a bad
I
Halloween
love Hugh
costume?
Jackman. I would know if he was in the
Yeah, I
show,
was
and he
saying,
has
I'm pretty
not
sure
been.
that would have been remarked upon.
Yes.
Oh yeah, I remember
Yeah.
that season with Hugh Jackman as the Doctor and his claws.
Well, technically, I said Hugh Jackman.
Jackman, yes, you did.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
I was trying to get Eccleston and other. Wasn't there a Hugh Capaldi?
Peter Capaldi, but you're really close. Yeah.
But there
Yeah.
was a Capaldi.
There was a Capaldi.
Yeah.
We've talked about Capaldi.
Yes, yeah, Capaldi
There's
was
no
the 12th
Hugh,
But
Doctor.
that does assume that I've listened to you talk about
That's
Capaldi.
wow. That's hurtful.
But true.
That's really mean.
But like when the modern series came back in 2005, this was a decade or more after it had gone. Actually, maybe 2 decades
I'd say it was
since
close.
it went
Yeah,
on the
'cause we
air.
went away in the '80s, I think.
Yeah,
didn't it?
and then they had a one-off movie with the 8th
Yeah.
Doctor to try to bring it back on Fox. It didn't
It
work.
did not
That
work,
was in the
yeah.
90s, I think. So basically, Doctor Who wasn't a sure thing when it came back in
No.
2005. Not at all. I just learned recently that apparently Hugh Grant was offered it and turned it down because he didn't think it was going to work and actually
is a-
regrets taking it, apparently.
That's a close call.
Which is kind of crazy to
Pretty
think
sure.
about.
Regrets not
Yeah.
taking it.
Yeah. Supposedly he regrets not taking it.
Oh, I can imagine. You look at the finale.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure if Hugh Grant had taken it, it wouldn't have worked.
See, now I'm just
So-
picturing like it'd be
Go
much
back
more
and
like a
rewrite that timeline.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
It's I'm like picturing Hugh Grant as the Doctor. Like that just seems so.
Maybe
like,
you
a-
should be a
comedy.
Yeah,
kid.
exactly. Like I think of like is it
Like
Bridget,
a Dudley
Bridget Jones'
Moore-esque
Doctor?
kind of. He's a little too tipsy.
Yeah, it'd be
Oh.
like
Has a problem with the ladies.
Bridget Jones' Doctor.
Yeah.
Isn't he in the Bridget Jones series?
Yes. Oh, that's great. I love that. Bridget Jones'
Yeah.
Doctor.
What else was,
That's
what
fantastic.
else was
Jones's
Hugh Grant
Doctor.
in at this point?
He was he in Love Actually?
Yes.
So the Doctor Actually.
He was the prime minister.
Actually,
and
Hugh Grant's movies write themselves for great
do.
Doctor Who
Yeah.
plugs.
They do, but with Christopher Eccleston, they picked someone who was a big name. The
Yeah.
later Doctors, honestly, Tennant wasn't established by the
No.
time they picked him. Matt Smith was
Smith
like,
was no.
not
Capaldi's
at
about
all.
as close to an established actor as you've had.
good
with
point.
Glenn
And-
and Whitaker.
and
now.
now
Hugh
Whittaker,
Capaldi.
yeah,
He's
but
a good one.
They picked someone with a big name to bring eyes and viewers, and it worked. And if you for those of you who may be watching, who maybe you haven't seen that Eccleston season, he only did it for one season. But his first episodes, they're a little bit rocky. The show was trying to find its tone between humor and seriousness, and Eccleston was just better at the serious stuff.
Oh,
Although
yeah.
some of he does have some funny stuff in it.
Yeah.
But if you can get through the first couple episodes, I actually do really like his season. I like his Doctor. His Doctor had the weight of
the Time War.
Oh yeah, of the Time War on him, which is something that that's something that was established for the modern series. There were a whole bunch of Time Lords when the series began. There weren't. You learn about that with him and the weight he carried, and it was a weight that went on to successive Doctors after it. So he did really help to establish the show. And again, some of the first few episodes are a little rocky. There's a lot of fart jokes. It's very strange, but it does become its own
the budget
identity.
is much more limited.
So it could
That's
have
the
been
other thing I was really
Hugh
impressed
Grant
with Whitaker, like
and
the
fart jokes.
Yeah,
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I don't.
The other
see
thing
it.
I find really interesting is like watching the first Whitaker episode. I'm like, well, clearly they got money because the effects on that thing. I was like,
Oh my
are a
gosh,
quantum
yeah.
leap. I remember Capaldi was talking about like on his first episode with Doctor Who. Like he walked in expecting it to be like special effects and whatnot, and they're like, okay, we're gonna throw this rubber spider at you, and you've got to fight with it. He's like, oh, okay, so we haven't really gotten that far away from.
Oh boy,
the
we're gonna
early Who.
afford an actual rubber spider.
So, but yeah, I was like, wow, the effects and the camera and like. Just the cinematography of the Whitaker season so far.
Oh, yeah.
It's been really impressive.
Those
Speaking
scenes
of
on the
shows-
train.
Speaking
and
of
the-
shows, we're
Speaking
like
of shows
well
with
past-
really small budgets for special effects,
yes,
We're going to run out of tape pretty soon.
Okay.
If we don't wrap,
Oh,
unfortunately.
sorry.
So
We can't just go back in time and add on more time, you're saying?
if you could figure out how the Doctor makes it work, yes.
We do have a TARDIS in front of us.
And explain it by a whiteboard.
No.
Yeah.
Alrighty, well,
Rebecca, it was
thank
great to have
once
you
again,
here.
Rebecca, for
Yes.
coming.
Thank you for having me back.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yep.
And until...
Next time.
I see what you did there.
Why do you have to talk over my great endings?
Exactly.
Because it makes you so upset.